I'm Stevie Fast Jackson, Killing Time Racing, and today we have a very special guest sitting down with our own media correspondent, Billy Stocklin. Ian Tocher sits down with us for a very in-depth interview about his life, his connection to our sport of drag racing, and life before, during, and after his accident in Rockingham Dragway. Thank you all for watching.
Ian.
Billy.
First of all, what is the appropriate pronunciation of your last name?
Tocher.
Tocher.
Tocher, yes.
I've heard it said so many different ways. Tocher, Tocher,
You probably haven't heard it as many ways as I have, but yeah, Tocher.
Yeah, like when you got the substitute teacher in school and they called out your name and they kind of pause and they know you know they've got the U.
For a long time, I had my column was called Tocher Talks, but because it made sense to me, I thought it was quite clever, but it turned out that everyone was thinking Tocher Talks or
Tocher
Talks.
Lots of people say Tocher.
So I changed it to Straight Talk. And spelled talk the conventional way. That's the writer, I think about things, words like that.
Oh yeah, the words are your friend.
Yes.
So what's your connection to motorsports? Obviously you have a solid connection to motorsports. Where's that come from?
I just love racing from when I was a little kid. My first, fandom, if you could call it, would be Richard Petty. I just liked Richard Petty. He, when you're like 8, 9 years old, kid growing up in Ontario, I had no connection to racing at all, but I liked watching cars race, and Richard Petty seemed to be the best one then, so that's my guy.
So what about the transition to straight line racing? Was that an act of necessity because of just the ease of it, or was there a connection from you to drag racing? Or
I never had a connection to it. I always liked cars growing up. I was a car obsessed kid to a degree, but I was never like a gearhead. I wasn't like I took auto shop in high school and that kind of thing, but I was not going to be the guy yanking an engine on the tree outside. I just couldn't do that kind of stuff. But I love cars. My first car was a 68 Mustang that I bought in, 1979? So it was 77. So it was like 9 years old.
Right.
And it was already a Rustang.
Yeah.
Because it was in Ontario. And everything was Rustang.
Salt.
I paid $100 for it, and that was a roadworthy car in 1977. But then as soon as I got a real job, I bought a 1970 GTO.
Oh yeah.
And I loved that car, and I still love those cars. And they're my favorite muscle car. But anyhow, I love cars. But the funny thing is, I never saw a drag race other than the occasional thing on TV, like a White World of Sports in between, ping pong and cliff diving. U.S. Nationals might have been on every once in a blue moon. But I never went to a drag race until I was about 6 years old. So me and two buddies went down to Cayuga and now Toronto Motorsports Park, and we went down there because I lived in Toronto at the time. And I liked it. Okay, it wasn't like I fell in love and this is where I belong, but I liked it. And once I got into university and journalism and everything, I didn't start university until I was like 30. But I went as a full-time student at 30 and got a degree in be a bachelor's degree in English history, general arts stuff.
Sure.
And by the time that was over, I realized that this is not going to help me all that much. So I started working at the university newspaper, doing sports, hockey mostly.
Right.
And I liked that. So then I went to journalism school for a couple of years at a local college in Toronto. So I did 6 years of full-time schooling starting at 30 years old.
Oh wow.
And when I came out, I just gravitated to racing, and I liked drag racing by that time. It kind of caught my fancy. That's how I got started.
Tell us about your history with hockey. I know you were an avid hockey player for years and years.
I love hockey.
Yeah.
But you know, I played as a kid. But I started that a little late in Canada. I started when I was 12 years old. I was an old man.
Oh my gosh, 12, yeah.
Yeah, but it was mainly because all my friends were playing and I wanted to play. And my parents were immigrants from Scotland, as was I. I was born in Scotland. And but I came when I was only 2 years old. And but anyhow, they had no interest in it whatsoever. But to their credit, they said, okay, you can play hockey. And I don't remember them coming to too many of my games, but I'm sure they did at one time or another. But anyhow, I started playing at that. Got away from it once I got into the workaday world, and then just I think it was around 1988 or so, I decided I'm going to get back into playing hockey, and I was a goalie by then. And I started playing goal when it was one of these deals where coach comes out at the start of the year going, okay, we don't have a goalie. Does anyone want to try it? Right away, I'm like, well, I'll give it a shot. I tried it. Very first practice I did, I just went, oh, this is way better. I go, this is where I belong. And
You get the action without all the work.
yeah, I go and like they bring the puck to me. I don't have to. And you know what? I never liked like some guys love the physicality of football, hockey, whatever. I don't like getting jostled and bumped and slammed into the boards. I never did like that part.
Right.
So once you became the goalie, you're going, oh, good. I'm like the, you know, the untouchable. I'm like the girl at the prom that all the boys are fighting over. Because if anyone does that to me, it's like it's going to cause a problem. So I like that part.
Yeah.
And I'm an entrenched goalie. Like my mentality is that definitely as a goaltender. So, and I played men's league hockey basically from, you know, like I said, I got back into it, so 28 years old or so until I got hurt at, you know, and I was 55 when I got hurt. So, you know, almost 20 years.
And you just turned 60 now.
Just turned 60, like a little less
It's been 5
than a month
years.
ago. A month ago today, actually, on the 10th.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it's been 4 years. The accident was in April 9th, 2016.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that, and can I point out that was on a Saturday. My last game I played was on the previous Monday, 2-0 shutout. So let's just put that on the record.
So let's move back to journalism and motorsports. How did you segue into that? You know, there's a genre of motorsports people, myself included, that feel very fondly towards you because when I was a younger guy in motorsports, you were the first person to interview me, probably in 2003 or 4.
Be around there at Huntsville, right?
In Huntsville, Alabama. I was there racing Outlaw 10.5 at a Orska event, and I felt like I have arrived.
Yeah, well, you were one of the Texas invaders coming, and like everyone was hearing about all these guys in Texas, and you know they're going to come up and try your luck up there. And when you guys, I forget who else it was.
It was me, Bud Morgan, Corey Weed, Brian Herzog, Danny Humphreys with Nick Williams driving in the Corvette.
Yeah,
the Porsche with the blown Hemi deal. Danny's still a dear friend of mine. And so is Corey and Brian Herzog, a bunch of those guys. I keep up with quite a few of them.
Well, you guys came out there, and I mean, you did all right against them, and I think you were one of the more successful ones. You had a white Camaro, I think.
White
right?
70 Camaro, yes.
Yeah.
Purple stripes.
Yeah, and so I mean, there was a little buzz coming. I mean, and that was like the internet was starting to gain some steam.
Yep.
I mean, it was like, it certainly wasn't like it is now, but I mean, there was like, if you were plugged into that world, you kind of knew about what was going on in Texas, and you guys wanted to come and, you know, we're going to show those Orska guys how it's done.
That's not how we looked at it. We looked at it as a gauging where we were at. You know, we saw those guys' times they were running were from time to time significantly better than what we were running.
Yeah.
But we always knew it's different days on different racetracks. Mm-hmm. So when we came over, and me and Brian probably more so than others in the beginning, we pretty much were tit for tat. You know, we were a little behind, Terry Robbins and Craig Miller and some of the front runner guys. Jack Barfield,
Mike Hill.
Yeah, all those. And so a couple of the front runner guys, they weren't tenths faster than us.
Right.
They were 4 or 500ths.
Right.
And then and we were, we hadn't been doing it as long. So like when we came out, it was confidence inspiring. Like the first race, I qualified well, did pretty good. And so who were you riding for at that time?
That would have been for Drag Racing Online.
Yeah.
I hooked up with them. Like it's funny, Drag Racing Online and Competition Plus, who I'm working for right now, both started in 1999 within, I don't know, a month or two of each other, just separately. And I think it was, the way Bobby tells it is that, he heard that Jeff Burke, who ran Drag Racing Online, was starting one up, and Bobby was like, well, if he can do that, I can do that too.
He's of course talking about Bobby Bennett.
Yeah, Bobby Bennett, yeah. And so but it just so happened that I came across Drag Racing Online first on the internet, because I was on the internet. I was online in Toronto in it would have been 1990, 91, pretty early. I mean, it was like I was definitely in dial-up time, and I met my wife in 92, and I definitely was online regularly before I met her.
Right.
So I was like an early adopter.
Way early.
Yeah, so I've been online. Now I haven't kept up with the technology. I think I plateaued somewhere around the early 2000s. I don't go for all the bells and whistles, and I'm not and I certainly never got any programmer. But anyhow, I always had like an online awareness.
Sure.
So I found Drag Racing Online pretty quickly. When we moved to Atlanta. We moved to Atlanta from Toronto in November 1st, 1997, our first day in Atlanta. And my wife got a job. She's American, and she got a job in Atlanta at the hospital, the Children's Hospital.
Okay.
So that's what brought us there. But anyhow, I found Drag Racing Online in 1999 or late 99. And I just sent some pictures to Jeff and said, hey, are you looking for any, contributors in the Southeast? And he wrote, well, actually, I think I just wrote to him and said, are you looking for any contributors? And will you pay?
Right.
Because I drilled into me in journalism school, don't do this for nothing.
Right.
You got to do it as a job. So and we paid. He goes, oh, we can pay a little bit. And he goes, I need someone who could write and take pictures. Can you send me a few photos and a writing sample? So I did. Right away, he comes back to me going, yeah, sure, we can use you.
Yeah.
And that's how I got started with Drag Racing Online, and that really got my foot in the door. So I started down here, late 99, early 2000. So 2000 was my first real year of covering drag racing in the United States, and that's where I got my start.
Do you remember who your first sit-down interview was with?
My first big interview I was with it before I moved down. This is kind of interesting to do. When I graduated from journalism school, I did my internship at a magazine in Toronto called Performance Racing News, which for years was the Bible of Canadian racing. And it was printed on newsprint, but it was written like magazine style kind of thing, and covered all forms of racing. So I approached them about doing, everyone had to do an internship at the end of their journalism school, and that was your final, semester or whatever, and how you did on your internship. So I went to Performance Racing News, and they took me on, and kindly. And
this was in what year?
This would have been 1990. It was right when OJ, the whole OK thing was going on, so it would have been 1997.
Right.
96 maybe.
So you were in your mid to late 30s.
Later mid 30s. Yeah.
Right.
Anyhow, went to Performance Racing News, did my internship, everything went well. Well, right near the end of my internship, the editors of Performance Racing News were getting annoyed with the publishers of it, and decided, forget this, we're going to go start our own magazine. We're going to go start a totally new one and go up against these guys. So they announced they're going to do that. Performance Racing News actually came to me and said, hey, do you want to be our editor now? And I'm going like, I just went, no, I barely, I managed to do this internship. I am not ready to be the editor of this deal. I thought that was a crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
It was a crazy suggestion even. So instead, I threw my hat in the ring with the guys that I knew, the editors, and said,
sure,
I'll come with you. And they said, well, you can come with us if you want instead. And
did they know about the offer?
Oh yeah. So they went there, and it was unpaid at first because they were just starting literally from scratch. I had to bring them my old dot matrix printer. That was the only printer they started with. I mean, they were really starting from bare bones, right?
Sure.
Well, things go on. We get out our first issue or two of Inside Track Motorsport News. That's what it's called, ITMN. And that was like summer of 1997 is when that came out. Well, within a couple of issues is when my wife finds this job in the States, and I had promised her that if she found a good job in the States, I would move with her because she had moved up to Canada for me. And of course,
tit for tat.
Of course, she gets this job right after this thing just gets going, and I was literally on the ground floor with them, and I had to go in and tell them like one day, hey, I hate to say it, but we're moving to Atlanta in like a month, and told all our friends there. Everyone's like, what do you like? Because we never told anyone we were looking, because I didn't know how long it would take for her to find a job.
Sure.
Not long, as it turned out. It was like 2 weeks. But she was a registered dietitian, still is, and she's a diabetes educator now.
Is she still works at the same hospital?
No, but she worked there for like 16 years, and then now she's doing other things. But yeah, I had to tell her when I'm leaving. And now Inside Track Motorsport News is still going very strong. They actually bought and now own, the big car show that goes to the giant where all the custom cars come, and they own that show now.
Oh wow!
And they put on like big deals up there. So they're, all the principals that own the thing, they all have cottages up and everything. And I'm going,
I got it.
Could have been there.
Do you keep up with those guys?
Oh yeah. I talk to them all the time.
Yeah.
Not all the. I mean, not on a regular basis, but I mean, like I'm in touch.
You're still very familiar with each other.
Oh yes, yeah. We always see it. We used to always see them at PRI and hang out with them and everything.
So that was going to segue into your first big interview.
Oh yes. So I was with Inside Track Motorsport News, and I was made the drag racing and go-karting editor. So those were my two purviews, was drag racing. So my first big interview was John Force.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
that's your first big interview.
Yeah, he was doing the exhibition stuff still, like he was doing booked in stuff. And him and Tony Pedregon were at London Dragway, I think it was. Not 100% sure. I think it was London Dragway, but London, Ontario area. And they were out there and doing like their exhibition runs and racing each other and all that kind of stuff. And he actually blew it up on his last run and took out the guardrail at the top end. But before that, I got to interview him. He was my first. I was so nervous. I didn't know what he was doing. I asked him stupid questions, and but anyhow, that was my very first big interview. And because I interviewed some kids that go-karted.
Yeah. 8-year-olds.
Yeah. But anyhow, he was my very first. I talked to Tony Pedregon then too. Actually, I was in. This is so dumb too. I mean, I'm there. I don't know what I'm doing. But I was in the media race, and Tony Pedregon was my driving coach. So he went down the track with me, and all that kind of good stuff. And I'll tell you, John Medlin was with him then at the time as the crew chief, and he was so nice to me. He doesn't know me from anyone, but he's going like, oh, if you're ever at a NHRA race, you need to come in, get a drink, you need to get out of the heat, just let me know. You've got a spot with us. Don't worry about. I mean, I was just blown away by how how kind he was
Yeah.
to me. So
Not
that was my
many
takeaway.
people have bad things to say about the Medlands.
No, and that was my takeaway from meeting all them and everything. And Force and Vedron, they were fine. They were cooperative and nice, but I mean, they weren't. It's a lasting memory for me.
So now that you've been at it for a while, do you prefer the John Forces and Ashley Force and Erica Enders, or do you prefer the more grassroots, helping the little guys get recognition moving up, or the getting the big interviews with the superstars?
I like being part of the big show and getting to go kind of where I want and everything. However, I don't like some of the rigmarole that's involved with it all, and you got to go through a publicist to get to the guy, and for a lot of them anyhow, not all, but and so I do like being part of the big show, and I like being considered part of national media, so to speak, and being recognized as a legit contributor to the greater body of drag racing journalism work. So I do like that. But as far as just enjoying going to the race, I like a race sort of like this that's kind of mid-level. I'm not that interested in going to the local track and just hanging out and watching, there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't really want to watch bracket cars all day, or I don't even, I don't want to watch guys that are just doing it on the weekend for fun.
This still has an element of intimacy to it.
Yes, exactly.
Of friendship and intimacy.
Yeah.
And for me and Stevie, as we've kind of gone up and down through the ranks together, we like some of the racing on the big show stuff, but it definitely doesn't have the intimacy and familiarness.
Right.
And I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes, and even amongst competitors, it gets a little bit more guarded, a little bit more, suspicious, and a little bit more cutthroat, than
Very much so.
Although it can be pretty cutthroat at a lower level too. I mean, no question about it. But so I guess the long answer or the short answer is I like both, but I like the ease of access better than just being at the big show just to be there.
So let's talk about your wreck.
Okay.
What happened there? Short version.
Yeah, as I said, it was April 9th, 2016. I was in Rockingham at a PDRA race, and it's funny, that morning I went in, talked to Roger Richards, Competition Plus photographer that everyone knows.
Yeah.
Roger actually lent me his lens that day, a 500 millimeter lens. I never asked for it. He'd never suggested I take it before. I said, hey, if you're going down to the top, I said, I'm going to go down to the top end because it's a nice day and I just want some peace and quiet for this day. I'm going to start down there and do the first round of qualifying down at the top end. And he goes, oh, do you want to take the lens? Sure, I'll take it. And I went down and I was, I went well past the quarter-mile mark. I was 250, 300 feet past the quarter-mile mark. They were racing to the 8th. And, there were photographers directly across the track from me, so it wasn't like I didn't feel like I was putting myself in an overly dangerous position. I wasn't trying to, certainly wasn't trying to. And I didn't consider it a dangerous position any more than anywhere else in the track. In fact, I considered it much safer than a lot of places. I just wanted to get away from the smoke and then the noise and everything. Tracks are out in the middle of boondocks. So anyhow,
sometimes it's nice hearing the cars buzz by with the engines turned off and the whines of the gears and the tires and brakes.
It's just different.
It's just fun. I like it.
And they go by and then you sit there for 2 or 3 minutes until the next pair comes. There's really not much going on. You can listen to birds, and so that's what it was like down there. But however, it was also very, very windy. Very. And when you're holding this lens up, which was even bigger than I normally would have, it was blowing around, and the guys across the track were complaining about the wind as well. And anyhow, when Ronnie came up, I talked to him briefly in the morning because it's kind of ironic. Of the 150 50, 60 cars that were there that weekend. The only one I still wrote press releases for was Ronnie Davis. And the only reason I continued to do that because I was writing for Drag Illustrated at the time, and I was there representing PDRA. I wrote their press releases, so I had a lot of writing to do. And the only reason I still did Ronnie stuff is because he only ever wanted a press release if he did something. If he won the race, he would do it. I mean,
That's such a Ronnie thing to do.
yeah, even if he qualified first, he might have had one, but probably not. But yeah, he wasn't like going to put out, we qualified 14th and lost in the first round. He does not want that press release.
That's not Ronnie.
What's the point? Right?
Yeah.
And I was going, fine, let's do that. So that's what we did. And he's the only one that I did it for. I talked to him in the morning, and he was not qualified. And it was the last qualifying run, and he was like, he wanted to get in the show naturally. So when he came up and went to go, because I had this long lens, I was able to shoot him. He was still way, way far away from me, but I could see him from the beginning. So I actually shot him from the moment he took off to the moment he came down, because I'm thinking, if he throws down a Hail Mary and is the hero and goes up to like number 3 or something, I didn't expect him to go number 1, but his car and his skill, he was capable of getting up qualifying well. Yeah. If everything went well. And so I shot his whole run. And he comes down and he went over near the wall. Well, first he rattled the tires right on the back. And I immediately thought, well, this run's done. I expected him to just shut it off and pull down. When he got back in it, he came down, he got over near the wall, pulled it back over into the center of the lane. And just as he crossed the finish line, he started the left side of the car started kicking out a little bit. And you know how when you're in an accident or something, you can remember all the little details and everything, even though it's happening pretty fast. And this was happening fast because we know he crossed the finish line, and I think it was 4.13 seconds at 178 miles an hour. So he was under power when he crossed it. The car kicks out and no parachutes come out. I don't know what he was doing, and the car just came around and did one of those like NASCAR things where it came around backwards and started coming off the track. Once it got backwards, the air got going the wrong way over it. When he came around, I just was watching with the camera. I'm thinking, he's going to hit this wall hard, and then he's going to go right by me here. That's what I thought. Because, you're thinking all this. He came around, the car started coming up off the track, and my last picture is actually, you can see the bottom of the car just a little bit coming up. But that's when I went, shoot. And I dropped the camera from my eye, and within a split second, wham, I got hit. It was like, I didn't even see from the moment when he started coming up to when I dropped it and he came over. I didn't even see it in that section. I mean, that's how fast it went from things are going bad, real bad, to getting hit. And he just caught my left leg, and he got a little bit of my right leg here. You can see took a chunk of it, but I didn't even break a bone in my right leg. But he hit my left leg, and it knocked me backwards, and I was kind of surprised that he hit me. Again, you're thinking all these things. I was like, oh shit, he hit me. Because I figured if he's coming over the wall, momentum would take him like 5, 10 feet, whatever, over the wall. And he was in front of me. It wasn't like he was coming right where I was standing. So I was shocked a little bit that he hit me. And I fell down backwards. And I heard the car crashing, that familiar crashing sound. I heard it out to my left. And I fell back, and as soon as I stopped, I sat up and I looked at my left leg, and I could see it was badly damaged, badly hurt. And I lay back down and I started waving my arms because I knew that everyone was going to run to Ronnie's car. And I didn't want to be up there 10 minutes later, someone going, hey, what's that pile up there? So I started waving my arms, and that guy came to me, and it was a black gentleman. I don't know who he was. I don't know whether he was a track worker, spectator, a crew guy. I have no idea who he was. But he comes up and he's like trying to calm me down. He wiped dirt out of my mouth, my nose, my eyes. And he's going, it's okay, man. They'll be here soon. You're going to be okay. They're going to help you and everything. And I just lay there with him. And I've had a couple of people go, well, maybe it was Black Jesus. And I go, if it was Black Jesus, he doesn't perform well under pressure. He was like freaking out. But he was great. And it's funny, I've had a couple other people come and tell me that, I was the first one to you. And I'm sure they were there early. But I know they weren't right because they were one. So I know it was a laggard. And if you're out there, if you see this, please get in touch with me. I would love to thank this man. He was the very first one to me, and I can't thank him and everyone that I know helped me that day and later enough. I mean, the care I received, I could not fault in any way whatsoever. But I'll tell you a funny story. Right while I was lying in, I knew I was awake. I'm sure I was in a certain amount of shock, but I was awake. I knew what had happened. I knew what was going on. I knew people who were working with me and on me. And I was in the ambulance, and there's a guy working on me on the side, and I could tell he wasn't freaking out, but he was concentrating, and he was doing whatever. I learned later. I know now. I guess I was bleeding pretty badly from a wound up in my side here. It broke my pelvis in the middle here and up here. Basically tried to tear my left leg off, and called an open book pelvic fracture, which just doesn't even sound good. But anyhow,
it's like breaking your little wishbone.
Yeah, so he was working on this, I could tell, and I'm lying there, and Bob Harris of PDRA
Sure.
at the time, he came by at least 2 or 3 times going, we've only got one helicopter coming, who's going in it, who's going in it, and I heard him saying that. Finally he comes by and goes, okay, we're going to put you in the helicopter. And I was happy, not because I was going, oh good, they're going to help save me. I honestly 100% thought, good, that means Ronnie's in better shape than me. Because we watch these guys crash, and they have hellacious crashes sometimes, and walk away with either none or relatively minor injuries. I mean, it happens often. So it never crossed my mind that Ronnie might have been worse than me. I really did, But as it turned out, it was basically they were just trying to decide, well, who is more likely to survive if we put him on the
Ian's probably going to make it.
Yeah. And they're going, if we send Ronnie, if we send me to the local hospital, I may die there. And they're going, Ronnie's in pretty bad shape. We're not even sure he's going to survive the flight, kind of thing. Tough decisions had to be made there. And I can't say I'm happy that they chose me, because I still feel terrible that Ronnie died in that crash. I do. I mean,
Up to that point, how would you describe your relationship with Ronnie?
Good. We got along well. I mean, I'm a liberal Canadian, and he was a very conservative American, but we never talked about politics stuff.
Right.
I mean, and I didn't care. I mean, he had his views, I had mine, and I mean, there was no point in arguing with him.
Right.
So we never talked about anything like that. But other than that, I enjoyed Ronnie. Like we talked some, and it wasn't like we weren't going to movies together or anything. But we had a good relationship. But anyhow, back to this. I'm lying there. The guy's working on me. They finally go. Bob finally comes over and says, "Okay, we're going to put you on a helicopter." He goes, "It's going to land over there," and I don't know what over there means. They meant it was going to land on the track, and then the guy working on me, he just looks up and goes, "Oh, that's a problem." And I hear Ricky Smith, who had been there for a while. I knew Ricky was there. Ricky goes, "Why? What's the problem?" In his, southern drawl. And the guy goes, "Oh, we can't get over there. There's a big ditch in front of us here." Ricky goes, "I'm a professional driver. I can get us over there." He just goes, doesn't even look up from what he's doing. He goes, "Okay, go for it." Because he knows who Ricky is. It's not just a random guy.
Sure.
And then next thing you know, within seconds it seems, things start bumping along, and sure enough, we go down the ditch, come back up. And next thing I know, we're backing up under the helicopter rotor blades, and so Ricky Smith drove the ambulance for me over to the helicopter.
So we had just finished our round of qualifying that morning also, and Top Sportsman was behind us.
Yeah.
And we had come down, and if he was one of the early cars in the session, because there was a bunch of us that were still on the return road.
Yeah, I think that's where he came from.
We had just gotten back to our pit, and we had got there late that weekend, and we were way down at the end of the pit spots. When Ronnie came sliding by, I was on my scooter and had rolled into there, and like it was a weekend that I had had a pretty bad tumble on the scooter the night before, and I'd been down at the nurse's station,
right.
at the ambulance. They were picking rocks out of my legs and stuff. You know, like they had the turnaround area down there where the trucks would turn around,
Yep.
and I had been going down there full speed and waved at somebody, and the front tire of the scooter got in one of those build-up cracks, and I put the scooter down at full speed and busted myself up pretty good. So I was being real cautious, and when I came into our pit, Ronnie was sliding by sideways.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw this clip of him going by, and then I just kept going until I ran the scooter up to the fence so I could see what was going on. But if you're familiar with the layout there, you nose the trucks right up to the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So I got up there and I couldn't see Ronnie, and I thought, oh shit, that's bad. So I turned back around and came out and started coming back down. And by the time I got back down there, you know, you were down there. There was a person or two by you, and you know, your stuff was kind of like scattered. You know,
Yeah.
like you're
Like a little mini explosion.
like a little mini explosion, and like I could see that like your body didn't look right.
Yeah.
But there was somebody there with you, and somebody else was running up,
Mm-hmm.
and you were up. You were like up on your elbows,
Yeah.
talking to the guy, and you know you were down like this, and your leg was rolled back over like this, and the guy was like trying to kind of straighten your leg or something, and you were kind of don't do that, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then we went over, and like Ronnie's car was just piled up. You know, I mean,
Oh yeah.
it was treacherous, and like Ricky was coming up, you know, so to hear your perspective of the deal, you know, so like you're inside the jar and
Yeah.
I'm outside the jar looking in,
Yeah.
and I could see the things, but my perspective of everything, you know, so like to me, the guy that was sitting there talking to you when I saw you back on your elbows, I'm sure that's the gentleman that you're talking about.
Probably.
And there was somebody else that was running up that I didn't know who that person was. I remember it was a kind of a tall, slight built, you know, thin, white guy. But there was a guy that was down there by you.
Mm-hmm.
But Ronnie's deal was pretty tumbled up and beat up. And at that point, you know, you were supporting yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, okay, well, you know, Ian's
Can't be that bad.
can't be that bad. You know, his
Yeah.
hips broke or his legs broke and is laid off to the side.
Right.
And I said, but like that dude's in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, and then I started to go down over there, and by then it was
Yeah, everyone's like
over there, and I thought, you know, Schweitzer was there, Robbie Lowry from our crew. He had been coming up on the orange golf cart, and he was down there early. And at that point, I thought, well, you know,
Yeah. What do I have to add?
I don't personally have any life experience and skills to add to this,
Yeah.
and you know,
That's how I would be too.
yeah. So I got up back on the return road, turned around, went back, and by then the guys with the car, and we were all like, holy cow, did you see what just happened?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we were like right there, and then he was shooting by.
Yeah. It was it was obviously for me a bad day, and I mean, even worse for Ronnie, and just a bad day for drag racing in general. I mean, it was very rough, but I can tell you, like, I mean, afterwards, the outpouring of support that I experienced from the drag racing community and from my hockey community was incredible to me. I mean, I couldn't be more, and I was never a person who used the word humbled kind of thing, but in this case, it applied. I mean, I was truly humbled by the reaction and the kindness shown to me by both my hockey buddies and the drag racing community in general. People who really had nothing to do with me, other than maybe they read some of my stuff online or whatever. But you know, just yeah, I was very touched by the whole deal, and I continue to be. I mean, I'm very grateful to like how everyone treated me.
Roger get his lens back?
He did. He sent it in, and it got cleaned, and there was nothing wrong with it. And the camera survived too.
Yeah.
Camera was fine.
Roger's.
I didn't get it cleaned. I just kept using it.
Really?
You know, I mean, it took me probably more than a year to use it again, but it was fine. I guess.
Well,
Press on.
That's the deal. Is like you refer to that day as it was a bad day for you. It was a bad day, but it sure could have gone a whole lot worse.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that could have easily been a double fatality accident. No question.
3, 4, 5 inches this way or that way. And
Yeah, a few inches more inside. He goes right by me, just scares the you know what out of me, and you know, nothing happens to me. Or it's like a few more inches towards my right, and it's gone. I'm gone before I even know what happened.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's very much could have happened. So yeah, it just shows you how random life can be.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to be back out here now. I mean, it took a while. It took like a good. They told me, the doctors they're dead on. They said it'll be a good year before you're feeling better, and it was. And that year included getting the amputation. The accident was in April. It got badly infected in October, and they fixed it, but they said the infection will come back. There's no question. And that's when I went, you know what, I'm not going to walk on this leg again. I think I'd rather take my chances with a prosthetic. And, you know, I went and saw the orthopedic surgeon, and he was like, you know, I can't tell you what to do, but I don't think it's a bad choice. And so that's what happened. And you know who helped me a lot just in preparing me mentally for it was Reggie Showers, the motorcycle drag racer. Yeah. I talked with him. Dan Parker, who had his own terrible Bromont crash and left him blind, he asked me would I be interested in talking to Reggie, and I did, and Reggie just, you know, he's the one that basically told me, well, if everything you told me is true and this is your true condition, I think you'd be better off with a prosthetic. And I mean, he's a double amputee since he was 14 years old, so
yeah,
you know, he definitely speaks with authority on the issue.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, again, drag racing connection helped me out just to give me real expert advice, not just, you know, here's what I think you should do. You know, he's lived it, and I owe a lot to Reggie Showers too.
All right, well, I appreciate.
Is that enough?
No, I appreciate sitting down, and it's at 5:30, and I need to start kind of getting ready to.
You got to do your real job now.
I got to do my real job now.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys taking a few minutes with me.